for the unlimited production race. 8 laps. There you see a Suzuki Katana, number 93, lined up on the grid in the hands of Neville Hiscock. 97, beside him, Glenn Taylor. Suzuki GSX 1100, beside him is Neil Chivers, 56, and further over, Alan Hales on 89, also GSX Suzuki. There, in fact, is the first 4 bikes on the grid. A lap record, you can see there. Outright lap record, held by Alan Hales. And then the next 4 on the grid. And Dennis Neal, this is the last chance this year for the CB1100R, which we won't be seeing in the Castrol 6R, to have a crack at the Suzuki GSX 1100s. Perhaps a fairly determined effort by the Honda riders, such as Glenn Taylor.
Glenn's doing an extremely good job lately, and unfortunately it will be the last appearance of the 1100R here at the circuit this year. Willoughby Club have changed the rules and decided that touring bikes should have a dual seat and be able to carry pillion passengers, so they've effectively ruled them out of the 6-hour race this year.
What are the main problems in getting a production bike around Amaroo Park circuit compared with, say, a Grand Prix bike?
Well, the extra weight, which works in detriment to the bike. They're quite a bit harder to pull up under brakes, much more weight on your arms. The tyres is probably the most important part, being road tyres. They're progressing all the time and becoming very good now. The top 5 brands are all very close, but they're still not quite up to the standard of the racing tyres. So.
And what about ground clearance?
Ground clearance used to be the major problem with production bikes, but now the manufacturers are improving them all the time, and basically the Suzukis and the Hondas these days, very little touches.
Rod Cox there on 32, a hard runner, a man who's come through from a 750 bike to running the outright unlimited GSX 1100 and is riding it extremely well.
And is not all that fussed by the task ahead of him of 8 laps of fast sprint racing around the Amaroo Park circuit.
In behind him is 49, Len Willing. Len riding only a Yamaha 750, the bike, in fact, that they took to victory in the Yamaha 750 kilometre production race at Oran Park a while ago with Rodney Brown. He'll be riding an 1100 Yamaha with him in the Castrol 6-hour coming up on October 18. 11 is Alan Blanco, Honda 750 also, 183. Ian Standen, Suzuki 1100. There's going to be a lot of Suzukis in that Castrol in the absence of any Hondas. Mike Bundy's on 173. 118 is John Fretton, a Honda 750. 69. I won't tell you who it is because it's not in the program. But 122 to his left is Gary Cheer. To his right at least. 54 behind him, Roy Chamberlain. And Tony Sims, quite an experienced rider in fact, on 69. Dennis, who's the man to beat in here?
Well, Alan Hales and Glenn Taylor, I think, will be out of those two. It's very important for Glenn this race. He's actually had the chance to ride a new superbike which Honda have built for him for today. It was the first time he was actually going to race it. But he's elected to stick with the production bike because he feels that riding the two and getting the 2 different types of tyres on each bike, it's too much for him. So he's decided to go with the production bike, put his full effort in on that.
Got a lot of ability and coming through well with the responsibility partially brought on him by your absence from Team Honda.
Yes.
Or from the...
Fortunate for me and fortunate for Glenn, but he's stepped into place really well. Honda have been very lucky. He's certainly going to be a rider to watch in the future. He's very clean lines, very easy on the motorbike. Just needs that little bit more aggression, I'm sure, which will come with time.
And that shows up a little bit in traffic, doesn't it?
Right. When Glenn's out in front, as he always likes to be, he can lap extremely good times, and I'm pretty sure that he's trying to go for the lap record here today. But when he does get with the traffic, it's basically just the experience that holds him back.
Dennis, these bikes with some a bit more than double the power of the Yamaha 250s which we've just seen, and there must be a real potential problem with wheel spin around the circuit.
There certainly is. the modern day production bikes now are very, very susceptible to spinning the rear wheel, and especially over there on Honda Corner. Once again, the tyres are much cooler on the left-hand side, and just a fraction too much throttle and you find yourself sliding down the road.
So let's watch it then. Neville Hiscock, pole position 93. 97, Glenn Taylor. That's Suzuki versus Honda. 56, Suzuki again, Neil Chivers. 89, Alan Hales, Suzuki. 32, Rodney Cox, Suzuki. Yep, 750 Yamaha. Behind, Len Willing, 49. Won't be in it, won't be able to stay with the front runners. Was regarded as a big bike a while ago as they all watched the national flag. The grid's clear. 8 laps. And they're underway, and it's Hales blasting through to the lead, followed by Chivers and then by Neville Hiscock on the Katana. So Suzuki, first, second and third. Glenn Taylor, though, goes into third, or not quite under Hiscock, so he's fourth at the moment on 97. Len Willing is in there in about 6th place on the 750, number 49. But here's Hales, the Amaroo Park specialist on 89. The man who's won 1 6-hour and whilst in the lead in one and chasing the lead in the other, fallen off, but has done hundreds and hundreds of laps testing here, knows not only the whole circuit but every corner. He's examined them and taken them apart individually, knows them absolutely backwards.
As Neil Chivers comes right up on him now. So it's Alan Hales in the lead, but with Neil Chivers really challenging on the other DSX 1100. Hales' bike built up from bits, in fact. It was never a motorcycle as such. It's a composite of about 3 of them. And it's been built specifically for this meeting because they had expected to have the Katana 1100s here. They haven't arrived, at least they're not ready to race as yet, because Hales' bike, in fact, has been air freighted out from Japan. So instead he's built this machine at the moment, and here's Neil Chivers with him.
Dennis Neal, 2 very different styles of riders here. Hales, the Amaroo Park specialist, doesn't go to a lot of other circuits and doesn't go as well there as he does here. And Chivers, who's such a smooth rider, well-placed to long-distance races.
Yes, Neil's very, very competent. He rides well at all circuits. Alan, as you said, doesn't venture to a lot of the tracks in Australia. And Neil's doing a very, very good job there because generally Alan Hales is regarded as pretty unbeatable at Amaroo Park, so I'm sure it's in Neil's mind to try and get by if he can.
Came out of Winfield Corner better than Hales, didn't he? He was just a little bit wider early on.
He's quite a bit smoother, Neil, and he doesn't seem to get ruffled as much. I think he keeps a clearer mind throughout the race, whereas Alan tends to get a little bit over-anxious sometimes and can quite easily lead to mistakes.
Came off up here in the loop when leading the 1978 Castrol 6-hour when being pressured by Roger Hayes, blamed Roger Hayes, but later on replay saw that Hayes was not near enough to have touched him at all and realised it was his own error. Then crashed last year when caught in the rain along with you, Dennis Neal. A few others had problems handling the rain early on, was in desperate pursuit, sharing the bike with Dave Hiscock, and came off here as he came into that corner in desperate pursuit of the race leader at that time, Wayne Gardner. But doing a good job here against the teammate with whom he shared success in the 6-hour in 1979, Neil Chivers.
There is nothing wrong at all with Alan Hale's sprint racing capabilities. He's not only a long-distance racer, but he's particularly aggressive in these short sprint races, as he just showed, as he cut Neil Chivers right off as they went up the main straight.
The specialist Honda rider, Dennis Neal, but very similar in terms of performance and gears and so on to the GSX Suzuki. So take us right around the circuit with us. What are they doing at the various parts? What gear? As we see Glenn Taylor in 3rd place on 97.
Right, well, 2nd gear on Honda Corner. You shift up to 3rd, down the approach to Winfield Corner. It's back to 2nd there.
What about feeding the power on now? Cautiously?
Yes, pretty cautiously out of Winfield. Back up into 3rd as you come onto the straight. Very important to get a nice, smooth, precise run up to the straight because that can affect the speed that you attain up the top of the hill by up to 5 miles an hour. So.
And speed up the hill?
And speed up the hill, yes.
Yes, but what speed are they doing?
About 112 miles an hour.
Completing 4, starting the second half of the race now. Hales leading from Chivers, with Glenn Taylor getting close, Dennis.
Yes, I just can't quite see Glenn, but he looks like he is starting to make a little bit of ground on him.
Well, Taylor, in fact, was involved in a savage duel with Neville Hiscock on the 750cc Katana, and finally shook himself clear of Hiscock and has now started off in furious pursuit of the leaders and is reeling them in at an amazing amount of speed. He was perhaps 5 seconds behind only 2 laps ago, and with the dice going on between the two Suzuki riders, they're slowing themselves down, and Glenn Taylor is moving right up on them.
Great form by Glenn Taylor, Dennis.
Yes, I think they're certainly going to get a shock when they become aware of his presence, but it's one thing to catch a rider if the guy's calibre in front, but it's another thing to pass, and I'm sure it'll be quite an effort for him to try and get by.
He's got 3 laps to wrestle with, 1.9 kilometres a lap, so 5.7 kilometres for Glenn Taylor on 97 to try and find a way around Chivers in second place, Hales in first. And one of the great attributes of the Honda is the ground clearance.
Very good ground clearance. So I imagine he might try and set himself up for a run down in a Honda corner on the inside. Very good position, and you can use the added ground clearance of the Honda to full extent there, whereas the Suzuki alternator covers do scrape a little bit through that turn.
And brakes too on the Honda, dual pistons and the calipers, so they brake superbly, particularly down here at Winfield.
Yes, excellent brakes. They're really a credit to the manufacturers the bikes produce these days. They're becoming better and better all the time.
Getting out of the corner there well, but his Chivers holding him up though.
I think the Suzuki riders will now be aware that he's there, and although Neil and Alan don't ride the team tactics, I'm sure they'll be foremost in their mind for Suzuki to win, so they're going to make it as hard as they can for Glenn to get by.
2 laps now. Dunlop Luke. And being the ham and the sandwich, Dennis Neal, is a difficult one too, trying to cover yourself from behind, but also wanting to have a crack at the bloke in front.
That's right, you've got 2 things to think about. Whereas the leader, the main thing he's trying to concentrate on is being smooth and not making any mistakes to allow a gap for the rider behind to get through.
The blue flag about to come out to indicate the last lap.
When the power comes on those bikes, Dennis, they really do accelerate hard, don't they?
Yes, very predictable, smooth power though. They're not at all peaky like the superbikes. They pull all the way from about 4,000. So with 105 odd horsepower, which these bikes are putting out, when they actually do come on, it's you've got to make sure you've got it in the right gear in the right place of the circuit.
And you have to just balance them on throttle through here, the Dunlop Loop.
Yes, feather it on in third and full throttle into 4th gear to a high speeder, which I consider is the most difficult corner on the circuit. Mazda House, you have to set it up a long way before and get everything right on line.
That's that one.
That's that corner, drift it right out to the white line, pull it back over, then back down to 2nd gear to get into Honda.
And out of here too, you've got to be careful with the way you feed on the power.
Yes, Honda corner with the left-hand side of the tyres not up to the heat, stand at the right is, that's probably the easiest corner to throw it away. Glenn trying very hard here to get by, but I don't think he's going to have the get through today.
And it's up to the checkered flag, and there she goes, the checkered flag for Alan Hales on the GSX 1100. Hales has not ridden here since last year's Castrol 6-hour race, so a very good effort for him. From Neil Chivers in 2nd position, and Glenn Taylor on the Honda CB 1100R back in 3rd.
Well, plenty of pressure on Hales there all the way, Dennis Neal, and he withstood it well.
Yes, he certainly did. As we said, he is the Amaroo Park specialist, and he puts in a lot of hours out here and does a lot of homework, but that's what it's all about. The production racing these days has got such a standard, whereas it's basically a team operation. The team that puts in the most time, effort, and thinks of everything is the team that usually wins.
A lot of background discussion and sometimes problems going on with regard to this year's 6-hour. The bikes having to run the tyre size as supplied by the manufacturer. Honda not only not entering any bikes, but not allowing any bikes to be entered by dealers or so on. So how do you see the 6-hour shaping up this year?
Well, I think it's a bit unfortunate, really, that Willoughby have been so stringent on the rules, and it's easy for people sitting in an office behind a desk to make decisions, but those guys out there riding the bikes, it makes all the difference the size tyres you have on the bikes, and the ones they're going to have to use for this year's race is 2 sizes smaller than what we generally run. So I'm sure that they'll not only be wearing out much faster, the traction is a lot less.
And ground clearance reduced a bit too?
Ground clearance as well. It's probably not such a problem as the traction though.
All right, well that's coming up on October the 18th, but let's see the results of that Jeb's Helmets Unlimited production race. A result that will please Graham Cornell very much, the man behind Suzuki distribution in 2 states and who are very definitely in the 6 hour. There are going to be a lot of Suzukis running. Kawasaki getting behind it very strongly as well. And there is a new Honda CB1100R, if that's the model type, that's coming up, but it won't be seen in the 6 hour. But although I hear that it's going to run in the New Zealand Castrol 6 hour in November, but we will see it in other production races. And but let's hear down on the grid from Bob Vincent.
Alan Hales, a great performance first up after being away from Amaroo since the Castrol last year.
Yeah, I'm very happy with the performance today. We've had a pretty bad year. Had a couple of early incidents in the year that's kept me away from racing for most of the year, but we're looking forward to doing all the rounds of the Australian Production Championship next year, and we're off to a good start.
I heard a rumour, I think you even told me last year, that you were going to retire after the Castrol.
Well, I didn't win last year, so I've got to try and win this year, and in doing so it means putting a lot of time and effort in, and I don't want to sort of blow that, so we'll give it a real shake-up next year with all the rounds in the other states.
What's your opinion on the controversy that surrounds this year's Castrol?
Well, I think it's very difficult for the promoters with a race like this. It gets so professional, you've got the professional teams, and unfortunately most of the positions held by the club are honorary positions and therefore don't have the expertise really to advise them. But this year seems to be a little different. They're starting to sort of upgrade themselves to try and sort of get better in touch with what's really happening. You know, you've got some big factories behind these bikes, and they want to know what the rules are, because in any event you work right up to the letter of the rule. That's the way it is. So they've got to sort of tidy up the rules, and then we'll be okay.
Don't think it'll detract from the event having, well, really only the Suzukis running as the top contenders this year?
No, I don't think so. I think that the other brands, I think Honda with their 900 have a good show. They're still competitive around here if you look at the lap times. Kawasaki are in there with a good show. Also, some of the 750s now are putting out a lot of horsepower, and around this tight little track you can't discount them either.
And what's the situation with the Katana, the 1100? Is that available for racing?
It's available for racing for normal production races because we have some air freighted out. We only got them during the week, so we used the old girl today. The rest are sitting out there with all the ships in the ocean waiting to be unloaded, which will probably take a few more days and will render them ineligible for the 6 hour.
And the ruling on that is still, what, 100 bikes in the country?
110, I think, but they won't make it. Unfortunately, they're still out there. The deadline's Tuesday night. There's no way they can do it.
Well, thanks very much, Alan, and congratulations on the performance.
Thanks a lot.